They'll figure it out, don't worry. We're in good hands. All good now? Okay. Can you still hear me in the back? Is my voice coming perfect in the back? Lovely. So we usually start with a question that has come in advance from our beautiful family from all over the world joining us online. But today, instead of that, I wanted to start with a question arose today in a satsang that we were gathered together in the garden, and it was such a beautiful question that I asked the questioner. I said, could we take this in the evening satsang? So I'm not able to see with the lights, but will the beautiful woman who asked the question today in satsang come forward? Is she here? Is she not here? Preeti love? We don't have a paper. Okay. Is she here? I can see you. Okay. No problem. So it was a question. I'll rephrase her question. It was a question about being in peace, being spiritually anchored and grounded at a time when there is so much going on in the world. Climate change, environmental destruction, certain political leaders in different parts of the world. She comes from the US, who are not embodying that which we would consider right. And how do you be in peace with it without being complicit in it? And how do you balance that peace and that spirituality with, should it be action? Like what to do about that? And I thought it was such a great question. So we'll start with that. And it's so important because for so many of us, this is the big balance. The doing, the being, the action, the perfection, the human experience here on planet Earth, and the perfection of the divine. And she said, how do you balance that perfection of the divine with all of this that's happening? And this is where it's really important to understand that we live on two different levels, simultaneously. Many levels, but we'll talk about two big delineations. One is this human body. This is an incarnation. It's real. We did squeeze ourselves out of our mother's womb. We do have a height, we have a weight, we have an age, we have blood that you can extract and test and tell us our cholesterol number and our blood type and this and that. So it's not an illusion in terms of an optical illusion like, a mirage in the desert. It looks like water. It's not. It's here. It's just not what you could consider the ultimate, highest, eternal truth of us. Because that which changes is lowercase t truth. That which doesn't change is the capital T truth. That's the nature of who we are. Body changes, situations change, circumstances change. Even in different times of our life, our dharma changes. Our dharma at one phase of life is different than our dharma at another phase of life. human package, in this karmic incarnation, we absolutely must act. We are here to act. It is why we have taken birth, to do actions that are in alignment with our Dharma, our highest purpose. In the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan Krishna speaks on and on about the importance of action and about actually how we can't even not act. There's a beautiful moment when Arjuna says, forget it. I don't want to do this. I don't want the karmic repercussions of this war. I'm going to just go and I'm going to sit in a cave and I'm going to meditate. And Bhagavan Krishna basically says, not so fast. That's not your Dharma. Your Dharma is a warrior to restore Dharma, to vanquish evil, to vanquish darkness, to bring back light, to bring back goodness. But even so, you cannot not act. You can close your eyes, you can stuff up your ears with earplugs, you can sit on your hands. Your mind is still thinking. To think is an act. But even beyond that, an act of omission, to not fulfill your purpose, to not do your Dharma, that is an action. It's just an act of omission rather than an act of commission. It's not something I'm committing, it's something I'm omitting. But it's still an action. And it still accrues all of this karmic baggage. So we have to act. That's this level. The other level is the level in which there is nothing but God, in which this entire creation is a product of Maya, illusion. And the best way to understand conceptually that level is to think about a dream while you are asleep. Everything seems very real. You walk out of your house, you get in your car, you drive to the office. The guy in the garage parks your car, you stop, you get a cup of coffee. I mean, I know this isn't a very interesting sounding dream, but whatever. So you get a cup of coffee, then you do this, then that happens, this happens. It seems so real. The car, the coffee, the office building, the people you were talking to, the bagel you had for breakfast. But when you wake up, you realize none of it existed, not even a little. It's not like it existed and then it disappeared. It didn't even go through a creation, sustenance, destruction process. There was no creation. It only existed as a manifestation of the stuff of your mind. All that existed was you. You were the car, you were the coffee, you were the bagel, you were the office building, you were the people you were talking to. Nothing, no one other than you existed. And on that level of awareness, that's what you can think of as the kind of the highest, truest, eternal level of awareness. Nothing but God. All of this which is happening in consciousness. In the field of consciousness, like your dreams are happening in the field of your mind. And it's important to keep both levels in awareness as much as you can at the same time, to kind of be aware, both of these are true. Truest, unchanging, eternal is there's nothing but God. And here we are in these bodies. And they bleed if you cut them. And they hurt if you hit them. And stomachs growl when they're hungry. And it's real for all purposes in this moment. And in the first level of existence, where it's nothing but God, it's all perfect. If you're sleeping safe in a beautiful bed, even a nightmare is perfect. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Everything is perfect. The only imperfection is the mind that thinks it's imperfect. It's actually all perfect. You're asleep in a beautiful warm bed, very healthy, very safe. It's only the illusion in the mind that makes you think there is a problem. So on that level, it is all perfect. Because all of this is just different dreams. Oh, I had a dream of climate change. Oh, I had a dream of this leader without so much integrity. Oh, I had a dream of human rights abuses. It's all happening in this field in which it's just happening in your consciousness. It's all perfect. Because it's not actually happening. And yet, every single spiritual master of every religion that I have studied, of every spiritual path that I have become familiar with, every one of them emphasizes compassion, love, truth, integrity, living in alignment with the earth, living in alignment with others, opening your heart in connection. Every one of them gives us teachings that are rooted and grounded in this human experience. How to live as humans on earth. And so, to me, it is unequivocally clear that the highest way to live is not to just sit here and say it's all perfect because it's all just a dream anyway. Those starving kids, those women in sweatshops, those people whose houses are being burned or bombed, the trees that are being cut down, it's all perfect. I have no doubt whatsoever that that is absolutely not the way we are meant to live. However, if we don't maintain an awareness of that on some level, the heaviness becomes very heavy. And it starts to feel like it is up to us. And there's a beautiful passage in the Bhagavad Gita where when Arjuna is talking to Krishna and he's saying, but oh my God, what if? What if because of me these people die? What if because of me there is this suffering? And Bhagwan Krishna basically says to him, oh really? Like, who are you? I mean, who died and left you God of the universe? You know, since when have you been the one who determines who lives and who dies? It's not up to you, it's up to me. Relax. It's all my show. I'm here. Play your part, do your role. But it's all my show. And that is a critical piece for us to remember. So the way that I understand it is that level of knowing it's all God and it's all perfect is that which we need to anchor in for our spiritual health, our spiritual grounding, our mental health, our mental stability, our strength. And yet we are meant to act from a place as Jivatma in a human body with a karmic package that has a dharma, a purpose to fulfill. And that purpose is fulfilled through action. And that action becomes a critical part of the perfection of the universe. That it is not perfection minus me. It is perfection including me. And in cases like climate change, environmental destruction, leaders who we really know are not in alignment with not just our morals and values, but really with kind of most sets of morals and values. We first anchor ourselves in the truth of the perfection of the universe, because otherwise most of us become so paralyzed by the heaviness of it that really all we can do is write tirades on Facebook and hope that people share them and share other people's missives. And it's good for getting off some steam, but it's not actually, sadly, effective in the let's make a difference aspect of life. So we need to be anchored and grounded in that highest truth so that we can become a channel for actual divine flow. Because divine flow does not arise from anger, it does not arise from overwhelm, it does not arise from outrage. It arises from connection and grounding and stability. And so once we are anchored in the awareness that, yes, on the highest, deepest level, it is all perfect, and yes, me playing this role is a perfect part of the perfect creation. And yes, we remember it's not about us or up to us because there is a divine hand here. Then we are able to stand up with strength, with courage, and do whatever we can. Some things are in our hands, some things are not. So we work with that which is in our hands. Certain things happening in certain parts of the world, not in our hands. Sadly, world leaders, are not asking most of our opinions or permission to make decisions that they're making. But there's a lot of stuff that is in our hands. And to then use the power that we have to make decisions about that which is in our hands. What we eat, what we wear, what we buy. For example, our consumption and dietary habits have an enormous impact on climate change, on the environment, on world hunger, on water shortages, on human rights abuses. If we collectively as people refuse to buy things that are not organic or fair trade, that we absolutely categorically refuse to buy the products of sweatshops, of bonded labor, we'd have a huge difference. If we categorically refuse to purchase things produced in industries that line the banks of our rivers and dump their waste into the rivers, we would have a huge impact. If we refuse to buy things that are a product of trade with a country that we don't approve of what's going on, or in a way that we're not in alignment with, you have a huge impact. If we go vegetarian, it's an enormous impact. The meat industry is the single greatest contributor to climate change. Every meal of hamburgers that you don't eat frees up about 10,000 liters of water on the planet. So we have an enormous opportunity to make differences in a lot of ways, rather than beating our heads against the wall about ways that we can't make a difference. Figure out ways you can. And again, your eating habits, your shopping habits, what you buy, how much you buy, where you buy, has a huge impact. If we refuse to buy things that are tested on animals, that are made from animal products, we would eliminate such a massive amount of suffering. Not only of the animals, but imagine the karmic interactions of the people who, in order to bring home a daily wage, have to, burn bunny rabbits' eyes with chemicals to make sure that, your mascara is safe. Just think about the karmic repercussions of that on planet Earth. If we refused to buy products that were produced in exploitation, it would have a huge impact. So we act in Dharma in ways where we can make a difference. And we continue to look, we keep looking for more, bigger, more powerful ways to make a difference. But we keep going back over and over again spiritually to it's all God and it's all perfect, because that nourishes us. And if we're not nourished, we cannot bring nourishment to others. We cannot bring change in the world. So we have to keep nourishing ourselves spiritually. And only then do we have the wherewithal to actually make a ripple difference. So thank you for that question earlier. Any questions that anyone here has? There's a mic right there in the center. Please feel free, do not be shy, to just raise your hand and come to the mic and ask a question. Yes, come. You do not actually have to wait to be called upon. Come. They'll lower it. They'll lower it. Voy a escuchar though, hang on.
It's okay, it's okay. Thank you for inviting this space for questions, first of all. It's a question in regards to the yogic path, and earlier on you highlighted about your past being scientific. So there's obviously this bridge between science and spirituality, right? So I'm just curious to know your perception or your perceptive about siddhis, and whether you agree with them or whether you think that they're possible to, of course, some of them make sense. But
the siddhis, the powers.
Correct, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sure. The siddhis are absolutely possible. We have lots and lots and lots of irrefutable scientific evidence of them. And it shouldn't surprise any of us. Think about it for a moment. When you have a Mozart, or you have a Bach, or a Beethoven, although we are just in awe and beyond impressed, we never doubt that actually their fingers were playing the notes. It never comes to us, oh, this must be some kind of a trick. What we see is a gift. We see a gift in people who have spent an extraordinary amount of time working with a specific part of their bodies to get that part of their body to be able to do something remarkable. Ballet dancers. Any sport you can think of. Singers. We look at people who excel in a variety of different fields that use different parts of their bodies to excel. Every single one of them has put in an extraordinary amount of time. Granted, they come into this world with a predilection, you could say, toward music or toward dance or toward singing. But then they have to do the work. Lots and lots and lots of hours. I mean, you look at, you watch the Olympics and you look at what people like Simone Biles can do. And okay, yeah, she came onto this earth blessed in some very special way. And yet, the thousands and thousands and thousands of hours, probably tens of thousands of hours, that she has put in to do that, which seems humanly impossible. I mean, think about it. A board like this thick, to stand on it without falling would be a trick for most of us to just be able to muster. Now you say, I'm going to do a triple backflip and actually land on it. Impossible. But when she does it, nobody looks at it and says, oh, that must be a trick. She didn't really do it. It must be some like sleight of hand type of thing that just makes us think that she actually did a triple backflip and landed right on the balance beam. We understand that it is a working with the body as a whole or certain parts of the body to master something that is truly remarkable. When you speak about the siddhis, it's really the same thing, but it's working with the mind. But it's working with the mind in very, very specific ways. Gymnasts and ballerinas and swimmers and runners all work with their full bodies, but they work with those bodies in vastly different ways. The siddhis are attained by working with the mind in very specific ways that have very specific outcomes. It shouldn't surprise us. We shouldn't doubt it. However, it's very, very clearly stated in spiritual literature, in teachings, that the siddhis are not actually something to be sought after, that they will naturally arise through working with the mind in very intense ways, intense sadhana, intense meditation, intense repetition of mantras. They will arise. But when they arise, you have a choice. And the choice is either you go with them and you become kind of a spiritual circus act of look what I can do, or you do not go after them. You allow them to kind of be and dissipate, and you stay focused on your path of meditation, of japa, of prayers, ultimately toward the highest goal, which is that God realization and self-realization. The highest goal is not, what are these spiritual tricks I can do? But the highest goal is the self-realization. So, yeah, the siddhis come from working with the mind. I do believe that you have to be karmically predisposed in the same way that people with other skills are karmically predisposed in certain ways. But you also have to put in the hours. You have to put in the work, the meditation, the prayers, the mantra. But don't let that be the goal. The goal should be beyond that. They will come on the path. But be wary. Be wary of anyone who tries to beguile you with their siddhis. Because it's very clearly and very strongly cautioned against in the spiritual traditions. So, yes. I'll tell you actually a quick story about that, then we'll take the next question. When Pujya Swamiji had first come out of the jungles in his youth, and he came to Parmarth, an older, much older, saint had come who could walk on water. And everybody saw him, everybody watched him walk right out onto Ganga. And he looked at Pujya Swamiji, who, at the time was late teens, early 20s, very young, and saw in him something very, very special and very unique. And he said, I want to give you this. I want to teach you this. And Swamiji said, well, how long does it take? You know, neat trick, but how long does it take? And the saint said, about 40 years I've spent doing this very intense sadhana practice, and now it has borne fruit in this way. And Swamiji said, you know, thank you so much, but no thank you. He said, for 5 rupees, I can get the boatman to take me across the river. I would so much rather spend my next 40 years in service of the world and give the boat guy 5 rupees every time I have to go across the water. So it puts things in perspective a bit. Yes.
Pranam Sadhviji. Sadhviji, you just spoke about free will and destiny. Now my question is, Krishna told all the steps to Arjuna, and at the end he said, just drop it as everything is predestined. So on the personal level, where is the destiny and where is our free will? So even our choices and challenges that we face in this life, even these are predestined. Could you please give us some information about it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's a very deep and very intricate subject, actually, in which every layer you go deeper, it just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper. So we'll start on the level that I was speaking about in the Arti, which is we are creating our destiny. Our destiny is created from our actions. This is irrefutable. Your karma means your actions. Karma actually means action. Your actions have repercussions. Again, you can look at this from the law of karma. You can look at this from Newtonian laws of actions and reactions. But we know that what we do gives results. Study for an exam, you're going to likely do well. Stay up all night partying, likely you won't do so well. Simple thing. Pour a glass of water on my sari, I will get wet. Punch someone in the face, likely they will punch you back. We know that actions have repercussions. Our destiny is created from our actions. Now, there are different types of karma. Some that is long since past karma. Things we did in past lives that are just bearing fruit now. Some things we did in past lives that will bear fruit in future lives. But combining with those is all of that which we're doing right now. And that is combining into this karmic package to create our reality today and to create our future. Now, she asked a very interesting question. Well, yes, I have the ability to make a choice, but aren't in a way the choices I make also predestined? So for example, you would think that my decision to pick up my fist and pop somebody on the nose in front of me was free will. I could have not done it. But scientifically, neurologically, what we know is different people's brains work in different ways. Some people are much more likely to bop somebody in the nose than other people are. And we know that a lot of that has to do with the family of origin we come from, the experiences that we have in childhood, the way that our nervous systems are created, the patterns that we learn, the habits that we get in early childhood, what we call sanskaras, the grooves upon our psyche. So if how I choose was essentially formed by my family of origin and my experiences in childhood, And that came from the past, like where does free will really come in there? And there's a very interesting book that I have started, but I have not gotten very far into it, although it's on my list of intentions, it's by Robert Sapolsky from Stanford, who's just a brilliant scientist at Stanford. The book is called Determined. And it's a book that essentially posits that we have no free will. And he's a brilliant neuroscientist. And it's a book that, from a purely neuroscientific standpoint, explains why we have zero free will, why every single thing that we do can be determined from looking at our neurology. Once I finish the book, I will be able to give you more insight into what it says. But what I would say on a spiritual side, that's just the scientific side. On a spiritual side is I don't believe it. Here's why I don't believe it. Our sages and saints and rishis had access to the highest levels of science. The panchang. No problem, it happens. The panchang, the almanac that was prepared by our rishis and sages long before there were even calculators, forget computers, forget telescopes, long before any of that, thousands of years ago. An almanac that can tell you exactly to the minute when the moon will be full, when the constellation will be like this. It does the entire astrology and astronomy for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. No telescope, no microscope, no calculator, no computer. Just by going within. The science that has emerged, the Vedic science that has emerged from rishis and sages sitting in caves meditating, is stuff that today scientists are quote unquote discovering. And there's a lot of examples. I don't want to take up all the time today going into them, but just trust me, there's so many places where today's science is discovering that which our rishis and sages knew thousands of years ago with no science labs whatsoever. So they had access to science. It was not just, my heart feels this. It was hard science, but it was hard science that used the self as the instrument. Now, all of the teachings by the rishis and the sages and the saints, and this is not only true of the Hindu tradition. If you look at the mystic traditions of all of our world's religions, and even some of the more traditional aspects of the world's religions, always, always, always is an emphasis on practice. Practices of meditation, practices of selfless service, practices of chanting, practices of prayer, all the different practices that we are given by the enlightened masters of all of our different religions. If none of it made a difference whatsoever, it makes absolutely no sense to me that we would have thousands and thousands of years of history across the planet of the most enlightened masters not only attaining that state through their practice, but then developing practices that they took the time and the energy to pass down so that others could also attain that. If there were no point, and we might as well just sit on the couch and eat potato chips and watch soap operas, we would not have the wealth and the depth and the breadth of spiritual practice, all of the yoga scriptures. I mean, think about it. If none of it made a difference, If your death by heart attack were written, why eat better? Why do pranayama? Like, I mean, if it's just written anyway, you're gonna, collapse from this or collapse from that, why bother? If it's written that this is gonna happen, that's gonna happen, you're gonna be miserable, you're gonna live in illusion, you're gonna, have awful relationships, why meditate? Why read scripture? Why introspect? Why do anything? And yet, we have a history of leaders and teachers and gurus and prophets and mystics across the world, across lineages and languages and thousands of years between them, who come to the exact same conclusion, which is practice. They may give you different practices, but the unanimous conclusion is that a practice changes you, and that change begins immediately. The change is directly related to the amount of practice you do, and there is no ceiling on the amount of change. As much as you do is as far and as high and as deep as you can go. And so I know that yes, we have free will, because otherwise none of it makes sense. So I'm fascinated to hear from a neurological standpoint from Dr. Sapolsky how in the brain, because then it'll be fun to sort of work with that and what our spirituality teaches us. But free will is that. Yeah, you may have been born into a family that meditates, but you may not have been. My guess would be, if we took a random show of hands here, how many, grew up in a family that meditated? You'd have some. How many that grew up in a family that didn't? You'd have some. Here we all are. How many come from spiritual families? Some. How many come from totally not spiritual families? Some. We're going to be able to prove that it's not actually all a product of our upbringing or of our nervous system or of the neurotransmitters in our brain or of our cultural influences, but that actually there is a power of free will that gives us the ability to choose. And when we choose in certain ways, we grow and we deepen. And when we choose in other ways, we suffer and we bring suffering to others. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. We will, sorry about that. We'll now be gathering back in satsang by God's grace each evening after Ganga Arati, just for a few days, because we won't during our yoga festival. So we've got about 4 or 5 days. I guess today's 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. We've got 4 days of satsang. So I look so forward to seeing you all tomorrow.